All right, we're going to be sizing this this yellow gold ring down just a touch. It's just a little bit too big, so we're going to come down like a little less than a half a size, and a little more than a quarter size, so like 3/8 of a size. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to check to see if this ring has any existing solder seams. And the trick to do that is take your torch and you light it up. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a real hot flame. And then very quickly, and I'll hold the ring in my hand while I'm doing this, very quickly, I'm going to heat the bottom of the ring. And what it does is it oxidizes the surface of the ring just a little bit. And you see it turned a little purple. And if I look very closely, you can see a solder seam in there where the ring has been sized down. So this is important to know, because if we go and cut through a ring and then go back to solder it back shut, and there's a solder seam there that we're unaware of, that's going to cause trouble whenever we start applying heat to this thing. So I'm looking to find exactly where my solder seam is, and I see it. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a little mark on it with this marker, because it's a little bitty line. But you otherwise would have no idea that that solder seam was there unless you marked it. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut through the shank of this ring, and I'm going to use a little saw blade to do that, and I'm going to cut right on that existing solder seam. To reduce a ring by one size, you would take 2.5 millimeters out of the circumference to come down one size. So half a size would be 1 1/4, and then a quarter size would be a quarter of that. So we were going a little bit more than a quarter of a size. So now I'm going to close it up with my ring bending pliers here, very gently, half round pliers. I call them that because there's a round side and a flat side. And I'm just going to close that ring shut, putting a little inward pressure. And now I'm going to slide this on my ring manual and have a look, see how it looks. And I think once I solder that shut, that's going to be a perfect size 8. Super important to get everything straight before you start soldering. I check everything with a loop and magnification before I move on. Still not closed quite enough yet. You really want to make sure that the joint is touching. You don't want any airspace when you go to flow your solder into that joint, because it will not get a good bond. Now I'm going to cheat just a little bit. Once I get this thing fitted right and I get everything exactly how I want it, I'm going to go over to the laser welding machine and I'm going to tack it with the laser welder shut. You can size a ring with a laser welder, but I prefer the bond of using gold solder on gold pieces. I think it's a little bit stronger. I find that the laser joints don't take bending very well. They tend to get a little bit brittle and are prone to breaking. So I'm going to go to the laser real quick and tack this shut with the laser welder, and then I'll go back and solder it. Okay, that probably set just about right. to laser on this. Okay. So I've got it tacked with the laser. Everything's gonna hold in place. Now we're gonna move on to the heat work now. So before you heat a piece of jewelry, you should make sure, number one, that it's been cleaned. I cleaned this piece of jewelry in the ultrasonic before we started. So now I'm gonna dip it in a mixture of boric acid and denatured alcohol. And what I'm going to do, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the lid on my denatured alcohol, because if this catches on fire on the desk, you will not be able to put it out. Then I'm going to light that on fire. And it's not a big blaze, but you can see the denatured alcohol is burning away, and it's leaving behind a very, very thin residue of boric acid. When I continue to heat the piece, when I first checked it for the solder seams, it left that little purple residue. That's the copper in the 14 karat gold. That's the copper reacting with oxygen and oxidizing. By putting a layer of boric acid over the entire surface of the ring now, that's going to insulate the surface of the ring from oxygen and prevent it from the whole thing turning purple. Because if you turn it purple, then when you're finished, you have to turn it unpurple. So it's just a little bit less invasive to do it that way. Let me get my glasses. Left them on the laser. You have to use glass. Okay. So now I'm going to apply a little bit of flux. This is just a liquid green flux. Some people like to use the white flux. I have some. We do use it. I like to use it on silver. It works good on gold though too. So when I heat this, you'll see the flux will burn away and it'll leave a little white residue behind. So that little white residue is the flux itself, and that's what's going to help the molten gold run into the opening in the ring. Flux basically just lowers the surface tension. Essentially, it works like soap. I know that sounds crazy, but like when you wash your hands with soap, the soap makes the water go into the crevices and cracks of your skin and cleans it. Well, this flux acts in a similar way. It allows the molten metal to fall down into the cracks. It reduces the surface tension and allows that metal to go in. So white gold, yellow gold, what do we have? These are all different types of solder that I have, and we're going to go with a little yellow gold solder. And so there's a bunch of different ways to get your solder. I like this little sheet solder. And for something like this, I'll just grab a little piece with my tweezers, with my pliers, and just break it off. And put it right there on the soldering bed. So people like to cut it off with shears, but if you can just grab a little piece and break it off, it works pretty good. Okay, so the action's gonna go pretty quick now. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get my flame set right, but you want a nice medium flame for the size of the ring. You want the metal to get hot enough, quick enough that it sucks the solder in. So there's my little piece of solder. I'm going to heat it and ball it up. So there's the ball. Now I'm going to take this little solder pick and I'm going to pick it up. So I've got a little flux on the end of this pick, and when I heat the flux and I heat the ball sticks to the end of that solder pick. And let me get this thing right where we need it. Can you see inside there? Yeah. Okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to heat this, and I'm going to put my little ball of solder, right? Son of a bitch, I dropped it. Take two. I'm going to pick up my little ball of solder, and I'm going to put it right there on the crack where I need it, and I'm going to heat gently. Now, you don't want to heat all over the place, but you do want to warm the whole ring a little bit. And now we're just going to heat right on the joint where we want it to go. We're going to watch that solder. It's going to start to fall in. Oop, there it was. Just that quickly. If you apply the heat just at the solder joint, the rest of the ring will draw the heat. So it's wise when you're soldering a ring to sort of warm the whole piece a bit. If the piece can take it. This is just diamonds and gold, so it can take it. But if you had a colored stone, it'd be a different deal. Or colored stone that couldn't take heat. But I warmed the ring and then very quickly applied the heat where I wanted the solder to go. And just like that, the solder jumped into that little crack. And I'm going to inspect it close and see if I got it where it needed to be. And it looks great. Which is not the truth. It actually needs a little more work. I thought it looked great, but it didn't. It needs another little spot of solder. And I need to switch magnification, going to the Serious Optivisor. So there's one little spot where the solder just didn't go, and I saw it when I inspected the work, and that's why you really need to look at your work. You can't just assume that it went where you needed it to go. You always have to inspect, and even after doing this thousands of times, I always know to inspect, because sometimes it just doesn't go where you hope that it does. So I'm going to add a little more solder to that joint. Now sometimes you can just heat it again and draw the solder from one side of the joint over to where you want it. But I think in this case, adding a little more gold is going to be the right move. So I guess I'm going to heat the ring again, and then concentrate my heat, and that's pretty much it. All right, that should have it. I'm going to drop this in the pickling agent, which is an acid. An acid is going to get any residue from the boric acid or any residue from the flux that we used. It'll get that off. And anything on the surface of the metal, once you put it in the acid, it's coming off. I'm just waiting for it to cool a bit because I don't like to put hot diamonds in the acid. Oh, that's good. All right, dropped it in there. Just needs a few minutes, and we'll take it out, clean the acid off, and take it to the next step. The next thing I'm going to do is check it to make sure it is the right size. You have to check everything every step. You have to make sure the solder, you have to make sure the joint is right. You have to make sure it's perfectly aligned. You have to make sure it's perfectly level. You have to make sure the solder goes in. You have to make sure that it gets a good bond. Then you have to check the size. If it's not right, you have to cut it and do it again. So sometimes we don't make them small enough, or we don't make them big enough, and you have to add metal or take metal out. It's better that it's a little too big and you have to take it down a little more, because if you go up, you have to cut it and add metal, and that's like doing the job twice. So, got the ring. I'm going to rinse it off, and let's get a look at it. Looks good. Looks good. Looks good, looks good, looks good. All right, cool. I'm going to steam it off and get it dry, and then I'm going to go back and do a little filing work on it and shape it up. Okay, so that was just high pressure steam. That basically blows any residue off the surface of the ring and make sure that it's dry going into the next operation. You can't hardly clean the jewelry too much. We clean the jewelry after every single process. Some people try to work on jewelry that hasn't been properly cleaned and the solder won't flow and you'll burn. If there's junk under the stones, a buildup or crud or something comes in on a piece of jewelry that's been being worn, like this one, you have to clean it first or it'll burn and just ruin the piece. Okay, so now we're going to slide it onto the ring mandrel and give it a quick check, and that is looking nice. I'm going to tap it with this the steel hammer to get it to flatten out a little bit. There's a little hump right there where I put that little bead of solder. Okay, cool. All right, now I'm going to take a little bit of grinding wheel and I'm going to take whatever excess solder is on the inside of this ring, which is not much, but there's always a little bit. You want a little bit. I'm going to grind that out. That looks real nice. Check my size again, and we are going to be spot on a size 8. Absolutely perfecto. Nice. Okay. Beautiful. Now I'm going to do a little bit of sanding work on the sides of the ring. Let's give it a shot. So, again, following my own advice, first thing I'm going to do, start on the inside of the ring. I'm going to use an inside ring buff to polish the inside surface. I'm going to keep it moving so we don't make drag lines in it. This is felt on a piece of wood and it's spinning 3,450 RPM, so it's really going along pretty quickly, and that just busts the inside real nice. So the inside is done. I'm gonna move now to a cool little machine. that I never really appreciated how valuable this little machine was. This is called a split lap. And basically, I don't know if you can see this. See if you can get above. Check this out. Can you get it to point down there in the? So this little wheel is spinning, and I've got a light right here above it. And if you look straight down, you can see through the wheel. Is it picking that up? So watch this. I'm going to address the side of the ring. And basically the flat side where I was sanding, because this ring isn't perfectly flat, it's angular. There's a flat spot here, there's a flat spot here, and then there's a flat spot here. So there's like 3 different angles happening on the side of this ring. And we want to keep that. It has it on the other side too. So keeping those lines kind of true to the form of the ring is very important. So these little flat sides, ooh, put a little more abrasive on there. So I'm going to get this little flat side done. Done. Important to keep it moving, but this is such a cool tool. Takes a little getting used to get handy with it. I didn't use one for years and years, and I remember all the old timers saying that split laps were just the coolest for doing repairs when you wanted to get something flat and kind of polish it at the same time. Because I could totally polish this on the polishing wheel. The thing is that the polishing wheel is not flat. The bottom of this little wheel is flat. So basically I'm just transferring a flat surface right onto the edge of the ring. Then when I go to polish it, I can keep my crisp lines and it doesn't get so rounded off. This is the difference between what I would call a fine jeweler and a just, you know, somebody who says, oh yeah, I work on jewelry. Some people work on jewelry and it never looks the same. So this is going to be my heavy compound. You see when I run the ring across this buff, I'm real quick. Zip, that's it. Zip, that's it. Zip, real quick. Zip. And I'm always keeping the piece moving. Always keep it moving. On any of these polishing machines, and even the hand tools, if you don't keep it moving, it'll dig a hole into the piece. I mean, just lightning fast, and it'll never be the same. All right, dropping it in the ultrasonic. Get ready for the ultrasonic noise. There it is. Now, I know on the video, it's probably not. The sound probably isn't as piercing as it is in real life. But this machine has ultrasonic transducers mounted in the bottom, and when you turn on the power, it starts generating ultrasonic sound waves that travel through liquid cleaner in this cavity here. It's heated, and anything that is on the surface of a piece of jewelry or anything you put in there, really, those ultrasonic sound waves just blast it apart. So you could take a chunk of concrete and put it in here, and in a little while you would have sand. Because anything that is not completely, monolithic, if there's something stuck on the surface of something else and you put it in an ultrasonic machine like this, the sound waves are just going to bust it apart. So that little guy is probably clean enough, because we're going to steam it off and we're going to go back for a high polish, and then we're going to leave it in the cleaner a little bit longer, and then it'll be done. All right, so now I'm going for my final polish. I'm gonna I'm using a different wheel with a different compound, and it's gonna give it a really glowing, beautiful shine. I'm done. I'm finished. Back in the ultrasonic. One more time in the ultrasonic bath. And zoom in and see if you can get this.
Yeah.
Can you see that little ring on the end there?
Yeah.
I'm gonna turn the power on. Watch what happens to all the polish on the surface of that thing. See, it makes like a little cloud of dust. It just, all those little molecules and particles of polish that were sitting on the surface of that ring, when those sound waves hit them, it just blows them apart. It's awesome. This little guy is done. It's finished, it's polished, it's clean. I'm probably going to clean it one more time after we finish handling it. I usually wrap them in tissue paper and then they go back in the job bag before we call the client and let them know the repair is ready.